Introduction: Rethinking the Rich. When you hear the word millionaire, what do you picture? A flashy sports car, a luxury penthouse, designer clothes and expensive watches? That's what most people imagine. But reality tells a very different story. According to decades of research by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko, the majority of America's millionaires don't look like the people you see on Instagram. They don't drive Lamborghinis. They don't live in Beverly Hills. In fact, they often live right next door, in modest homes, driving used cars, quietly accumulating wealth while the world overlooks them. The Millionaire Next Door shattered the myth of the high-income, high-spending elite and replaced it with a much more grounded truth. Real wealth is built slowly, quietly, and intentionally. It's not about luck, inheritance, or big salaries. It's about discipline, choices, and habits. Most millionaires are first-generation wealthy. They didn't win the lottery. They didn't build the next tech unicorn. They simply made smart financial decisions, lived below their means, and valued financial independence over social status. This audiobook isn't about becoming rich overnight. It's about learning the everyday habits that can make you quietly, sustainably wealthy over time. These are the patterns, mindsets, and routines that define the Millionaire Next Door. Whether you're just starting your financial journey or you're looking to fine-tune your path to long-term freedom, the lessons ahead will help you think differently about money and about what true wealth really means. Let's dive into the 6 core habits that quietly rich people live by and how you can start applying them today. Habit 1. Live well below your means. If there's one defining trait of the quietly rich, it's this. They live well below their means, not just a little below, but significantly. While many high-income earners fall into the trap of lifestyle inflation, the Millionaire Next Door takes a different route. They don't chase appearances, they chase freedom. And they understand that freedom comes from margin, spending less than you earn consistently over decades. Contrary to the image of luxury and status, most millionaires wear inexpensive clothes, drive average cars, and live in ordinary neighborhoods. Why? Because they don't see money as a tool for signaling success. They see it as a tool for stability, opportunity, and independence. The power of frugality. Frugality doesn't mean being cheap. It means being intentional. It means understanding the value of a dollar and knowing that every dollar not spent is a seed for future growth. Millionaires next door are meticulous with how they allocate their money. They don't deprive themselves, but they also don't waste. They shop sales, negotiate prices, and delay gratification when necessary. In many interviews, Stanley and Danko discovered that most millionaires avoid debt unless it's for appreciating assets. They pay off their homes early. They use cash or low-interest financing when buying cars, often used, rarely new. They don't fall into the trap of leasing luxury vehicles or constantly upgrading gadgets. Their focus is long-term wealth, not short-term excitement. Income versus wealth. One of the book's most important distinctions is between income and wealth. High income does not equal financial success. In fact, many people who earn hundreds of thousands of dollars each year live paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because they've scaled their lifestyle to match their earnings. The house gets bigger, the vacation's more lavish, the car's more expensive. And with every upgrade comes more debt, more stress, and less flexibility. The Millionaire Next Door avoids this trap. Even as their income grows, their expenses remain relatively stable. That difference, the gap between income and spending, is where wealth is born. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. The quiet confidence of living modestly, living below your means, also creates a kind of internal strength. You're not dependent on outside validation. You don't need to impress anyone. You don't fear losing your job or economic downturns as much. because your lifestyle doesn't demand constant income growth to sustain it. This financial margin also creates optionality. Want to take a year off, change careers, start a business, retire early? The person living on 70% of their income has choices. The one living on 110% doesn't. Avoiding lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep is subtle and dangerous. It's the slow rise in spending that follows each raise, promotion, or windfall. It often feels justified. You've worked hard, so you deserve the nicer car, the bigger apartment, the designer wardrobe. But this mindset erodes the very foundation of financial independence. Millionaires resist this creep. They celebrate income increases by investing more, not by upgrading everything. They recognize that maintaining a modest lifestyle, even when you could afford more, is a form of financial discipline few people master, but that discipline pays massive dividends over time. Real examples from the research. Stanley and Danko found that the average millionaire's home cost less than $300,000, even when their net worth was well over $1 million. They didn't live in luxury zip codes. They weren't buying homes to impress neighbors. They were buying homes to live in. And many kept the same house for decades. Their cars were often 2 to 4 years old, well maintained, and fully paid for. They rarely leased vehicles. They saw cars as depreciating tools, not status symbols. And they extended this mindset to clothing, jewelry, restaurants, and entertainment. They enjoyed life, but they didn't overspend on it. The compounding advantage. When you live well below your means, you don't just save money, you create capital, and that capital can be invested, and those investments generate returns, and over time, those returns compound. This is how seemingly average earners become millionaires by 50. They didn't win the lottery, they didn't strike gold, they just mastered the simple math of living on less and investing the difference. This habit, applied consistently, becomes unstoppable. In summary, living well below your means isn't a sacrifice, it's a strategy. It's how the quietly rich build wealth, freedom, and peace of mind. It's how they stay out of debt, take advantage of opportunities, and sleep better at night. And it's something anyone can start doing, regardless of income level. The millionaire next door doesn't care what others think of their car, their house, or their clothes. They care about what's in their bank account, investment portfolio, and time horizon. And that's why they win. Habit 2. Prioritize financial independence. Over status. One of the clearest dividing lines between the quietly rich and everyone else is this. Millionaires prioritize freedom over appearance. They don't care about looking rich, they care about being rich. In a world where image often trumps reality, this mindset is rare, but it's foundational. While many people work hard just to fund a lifestyle designed to impress others, the millionaire next door builds a life that supports peace, autonomy, and long-term wealth. Status symbols are expensive distractions. Flashy cars, luxury watches, designer brands. They might make you look successful, but they often signal the opposite. As Stanley and Danko discovered, many high-income earners who display wealth through their lifestyle are actually under-accumulators of wealth, UAWs. They spend so much trying to look rich that they have little left to invest and grow. In contrast, millionaires often fly under the radar. They're what the authors call PWs, prodigious accumulators of wealth. They quietly build their net worth over time, rarely drawing attention. They don't need to prove anything. Why? Because their goal isn't status, it's independence. Financial independence means having control over your time, choices, and future. It means not needing a paycheck to cover your lifestyle. It means having the flexibility to say no to toxic jobs, bad deals, unnecessary stress. Status symbols, they just get in the way. The high cost of looking rich. Trying to keep up appearances comes with a steep price. New cars depreciate rapidly. Designer fashion loses value instantly. Upscale homes come with higher maintenance, insurance, and taxes. And luxury spending often leads to lifestyle inflation, the silent killer of wealth. Stanley and Danko found that many of the most financially insecure households were in high-income neighborhoods. Why? Because in affluent areas, there's unspoken pressure to match your neighbors, to drive what they drive, vacation where they vacation, spend like they spend. But many of these people are drowning in debt or living paycheck to paycheck behind the scenes. The Millionaire Next Door avoids this trap by living in modest communities, driving reliable vehicles, and keeping consumption aligned with their values, not their ego. They don't care if their neighbors are impressed. They care if their balance sheet is healthy. Choosing freedom over flash. When you prioritize financial independence, you shift your entire relationship with money. You stop asking, "How can I impress others?" and start asking, "How can I build a life that works for me?" That shift creates powerful ripple effects. You delay gratification so you can invest more. You avoid debt because you value flexibility over short-term pleasure. You build emergency funds, retirement plans, and cash-flowing assets, not image. You stop making decisions based on social media optics and start making them based on financial truth. Millionaires Next Door aren't minimalists for show. They're strategic about how they allocate attention and money. They understand that every dollar wasted on appearance is a dollar that could have been invested in freedom, self-worth versus net worth. People often tie their self-worth to their net worth, or worse, to their perceived net worth. They believe if they don't look successful, they're not successful. But millionaires next door have learned to separate the two. Their self-worth comes from what they've built, who they've become, and how much control they have over their lives, not from what others see. This internal validation makes them powerful. It gives them the discipline to say no to lifestyle pressure, to build quietly while others spend loudly, and to stay focused when the world pushes distractions. What you drive doesn't drive wealth. One of the most famous findings in The Millionaire Next Door is this. The most commonly driven car among millionaires was a Toyota, followed by Honda and Ford. Not BMW, not Mercedes, not Tesla. They don't spend money on cars that depreciate rapidly. They spend money on assets that appreciate, and even when they could afford high-end models, they often don't bother. It's not that they're cheap, it's that they understand value. A car is for transportation, not validation. The same principle applies to other purchases. They ask, does this improve my life in a meaningful, lasting way? If not, they pass. Making peace with invisibility. Here's a truth that takes maturity to embrace. If you want to build real wealth, you might need to let go of being seen. You might need to be okay with looking average while you quietly become exceptional. That's what millionaires next door do. They don't get external applause, but they get internal peace. They know their money is working for them. They know they're building a future of freedom, not dependence, and they know that chasing status is a trap, one that keeps most people stuck in the cycle of earn, spend, impress, repeat. True wealth doesn't show off. It shows up when you need it most. In summary, millionaires next door don't spend to impress, they spend to gain freedom. They understand that financial independence is worth more than admiration, and that self-respect lasts longer than envy. So if your goal is to look rich, spend. If your goal is to be rich, save. Invest. Grow. And don't worry who notices. The right people will. Habit 3. Budget, track, and plan relentlessly. It might not be sexy, but it's one of the most powerful habits the quietly rich swear by. They track every dollar. They plan ahead. They know exactly what they spend, where it goes, and how their net worth evolves over time. While others hope they're on the right path, millionaires next door know they are, because they measure it. This level of financial clarity doesn't come from luck or talent. It comes from intentional, repeatable behaviors, and anyone can adopt them. Planning isn't restrictive, it's liberating. There's a misconception that budgeting is about saying no all the time, that it's about scarcity and sacrifice. But for the millionaire next door, budgeting isn't restrictive, it's liberating. Why? Because it replaces financial anxiety with financial control. When you know what's coming in, what's going out, and what's left over, you're in a position of power. You can make decisions based on truth, not emotion. You know when to say yes and when to walk away. You stop guessing and start building. Millionaires treat personal finance like a business. They review their finances regularly, analyze cash flow, and optimize spending. They create plans for emergencies, for investments, for retirement, and most importantly, they stick to those plans. Net worth tracking. The millionaire's scoreboard. One of the most consistent behaviors found in the millionaire next door was net worth tracking. Millionaires track their net worth like others check their Instagram likes. They're obsessed with it, and for good reason. Net worth is the single most important metric for long-term wealth. It's your financial pulse. It tells you if you're growing, shrinking, or stagnating. And it forces you to think about both sides of the equation, assets and liabilities. Here's the basic formula. Net worth equals what you own minus what you owe. That includes everything: home equity, savings, investments, retirement accounts, businesses, minus all debts. Once you start tracking it, you start thinking differently. You begin asking, will this purchase increase or decrease my net worth? Is this a liability disguised as an asset? What can I reduce or eliminate to accelerate growth? Millionaires know that what gets measured gets improved, and net worth is the ultimate long game. Budgeting is not just for struggling people. Another myth. Budgeting is only for those trying to make ends meet. In reality, the more you earn, the more important it becomes. Higher income means more responsibility, more taxes, more risk of waste, and more temptation. The millionaires next door don't assume their high income will take care of everything. In fact, many earned middle-class salaries. What made the difference was how they managed those earnings. They created monthly budgets that aligned with long-term goals. They automated savings. They capped discretionary spending. And when windfalls came, bonuses, tax returns, extra income, they didn't rush to spend it, they invested it. This discipline compounds over time. And it's how seemingly normal people become wealthy in silence. The role of goals in wealth building. Millionaires don't drift into success. They plan it. They set clear, actionable goals for saving, investing, debt payoff, and career growth. They don't just say, I want to retire early. They define what that looks like, how much it will cost, and what steps are required to get there. They reverse engineer their goals. For example, want to have $2 million in net worth in 20 years? That means saving, investing, X dollars per year. That means budgeting Y dollars per month. That means saying no to purchases that delay that timeline. This kind of clarity removes the guesswork. It turns dreams into action. And it creates the momentum necessary to stick with the plan, especially when others are blowing their budgets on things that don't last. Tools of the quietly rich. Millionaires use simple tools to track and plan. Spreadsheets or budgeting apps like YNAB, Mint, or Tiller. Net worth trackers updated monthly or quarterly. Automatic transfers to investment accounts. Calendar reminders for financial check-ins. Spending journals or category tracking for awareness. The key isn't which tool you use, it's that you use something consistently. The habit matters more than the platform. Flexibility and course correction. Millionaires know life doesn't always go according to plan. Markets change, jobs change, emergencies happen. That's why they budget with flexibility and build buffers. They create emergency funds, they plan for irregular expenses, they avoid locking themselves into obligations that can't adjust. And when they get off track, they recalibrate. They don't panic, they pivot. That adaptability is part of the discipline. They don't treat their plan as a prison, they treat it as a compass. One that keeps them oriented toward wealth even when life throws a storm. In summary, the millionaire next door doesn't guess. They plan, track, and adjust. They know where every dollar goes. They treat their personal finances like a well-run business. They obsess over net worth, align spending with purpose, and make wealth building a consistent, measurable practice. Most people avoid tracking because they're afraid of what they'll see. But the wealthy face the truth because facing it is the first step to changing it. So if you want to build quiet wealth, don't just make more money, manage it better. Habit. 4. Make smart investment decisions. If living below your means is the foundation and budgeting is the structure, then investing is the engine that quietly powers long-term wealth. Millionaires next door don't just save, they put their money to work, and they do it with a strategy that's often simple, consistent, and boring to most outsiders, which is exactly why it works. Unlike those chasing hot stocks, crypto trends, or speculative real estate flips, these quiet millionaires build wealth through stable, long-term investments that grow steadily over time. Investing is a behavior, not a trick. The myth is that becoming wealthy requires finding the perfect investment. But what the millionaire next door reveals is this. Most millionaires didn't make their fortune from one lucky stock pick or timing the market. They became wealthy because they consistently spent less than they earned, saved, and invested regularly. Let compound interest do the rest. Their success is built on behavior, not brilliance. They don't need to be hedge fund managers. They just need discipline. Where the quietly rich invest. Stanley and Danko found that most millionaires invest in stocks and mutual funds, especially index funds. Real estate, primarily rental properties. Business ownership, either their own or through equity stakes. But the common thread isn't the type of investment, it's the strategy. They prioritize long-term holding periods, often 10+ years. Diversification to reduce risk. Low fees and low taxes. Steady contributions even when markets dip. They don't chase quick wins. They build a portfolio that works quietly in the background while they focus on living life. The power of compounding. Albert Einstein reportedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Quiet millionaires treat it like gospel. They know that starting early, even with small amounts, can lead to massive results. For example, investing $500 per month from age 25 to 65 at an average 8% return results in over $1.5 million. Wait just 10 years later to start, and that same plan results in only $680,000. Time matters. The millionaire next door starts early, contributes regularly, and lets the magic of compounding handle the rest. They're not in a rush, they're in a rhythm. Avoiding the noise. Smart investors avoid the emotional roller coaster of the news cycle. They don't panic sell during a market crash. They don't FOMO into whatever CNBC is hyping this week. They stay the course. Why? Because they know volatility is normal, and trying to time the market usually does more harm than good. According to studies, even missing the 10 best days in the market over a decade can cut your returns in half. Millionaires don't try to be smarter than the market. They align with it, stick to their plan, and let time do the heavy lifting. Real estate, the silent wealth engine. While stocks are a common choice, many millionaires build their wealth with real estate, especially rental properties. Why? Because real estate provides cash flow from rent, appreciation over time, tax advantages through depreciation and deductions, leverage using other people's money to buy appreciating assets. They don't speculate on luxury properties or risky markets. They buy steady, income-producing properties in stable areas, and they manage them like a business, not a hobby. They view each property as an employee that brings in money every month. Business ownership, the fastest path for some. Many millionaires built their wealth not by investing in someone else's business, but by building their own. Whether it's a small service company, a local franchise, or an online store, ownership accelerates freedom. When you own a business, you control income potential. You can reinvest profits. You can create systems that scale. You build an asset that appreciates. Not every millionaire owns a business, but those who do often reach wealth faster. The key is that they don't just hustle, they build systems that generate income independently of their time. It's not about being self-employed, it's about being a creator. Risk management, not risk avoidance. Millionaires don't avoid risk, but they manage it. They educate themselves. They understand downside scenarios. They don't over-leverage. They have insurance. They diversify. And most importantly, they never bet the farm. They use risk as a tool, not a threat. And they never confuse volatility with loss. This is why they don't panic when markets dip. They planned for it. This is why they can weather business challenges. They built reserves. They don't operate on hope. They operate on strategy. Patience is the competitive edge. In a world chasing instant gratification, patience is a superpower. Quiet millionaires embrace long timelines. They let their portfolios grow, let rental properties appreciate, and let systems mature. They don't look rich today, but 10 to 20 years later, they quietly pass everyone who was sprinting. Wealth is a game of years, not weeks, and millionaires play that game better than anyone. In summary, smart investing isn't about finding the next big thing. It's about consistently putting money into proven vehicles, holding your ground when others panic, and letting time and discipline build your future. Millionaires don't need to gamble. They need to stay focused, stay invested, and let their money grow while they sleep. If you want to build wealth like the millionaire next door, invest like one. Habit 5. Raise financially responsible children. One of the most overlooked yet powerful habits of the quietly wealthy is this. They teach their children how to be financially responsible. They don't just build wealth for themselves, they raise the next generation to preserve and grow it. According to the Millionaire Next Door, many millionaires are deeply intentional about how they raise their kids around money. They understand that without financial education and discipline, wealth can disappear within a single generation. And they know that financial dependency can destroy ambition. Generational wealth is built through habits, not handouts. It's tempting, especially for wealthy parents, to make life easier for their children, to pay for everything, to shield them from struggle. But what Stanley and Danko discovered is this: the more financial help adult children receive, the less wealth they accumulate themselves. Why? Because unearned money often removes the incentive to build earn, and grow. It creates dependency. It weakens problem-solving skills. And it replaces self-worth with entitlement. Millionaires who preserve wealth across generations follow a different path. They provide opportunity, not dependency. They invest in education, yes, but they also teach the value of work, the discipline of saving, and the mindset of responsibility. Teaching kids the value of money. The children of millionaires next door learn early that money is earned, not given. They're expected to work, whether it's chores, part-time jobs, or entrepreneurial ventures. They learn to associate income with effort, not entitlement. They also learn delayed gratification. Millionaire parents are more likely to say no than yes when it comes to impulsive purchases. They encourage their children to save up for what they want, to compare prices, to make trade-offs, and they involve their kids in financial conversations about budgets, investments, and long-term planning. These aren't taboo topics, they're part of everyday life. The result? Their children grow up financially literate, confident, and prepared to manage money instead of being managed by it, avoiding economic outpatient care. One of the strongest warnings in the book is about economic outpatient care, the ongoing financial help many parents give their adult children. It often starts small, a few $100s for bills, a down payment on a car covering rent just this once. But it grows over time, and eventually it becomes expected. The data shows that children who receive regular financial support from parents are less likely to become wealthy themselves. Why? Because they build lifestyles around the support. They learn to rely on external aid instead of internal discipline. Millionaire parents limit this kind of help. Instead, they support their children in ways that build autonomy, encouraging them to live within their means, recommending they save a portion of every paycheck, helping with education or business investments that yield long-term growth, letting them experience financial consequences when they overspend. This approach might seem tough, but it creates strength. And that strength builds wealth that lasts. Modeling matters more than lecturing. Children learn more from what you do than what you say. That's why millionaire parents don't just teach, they model. They live the habits they want to pass on: frugality, planning, investing, avoiding debt, and thinking long-term. They don't lecture about saving, they demonstrate it. They don't brag about money, they quietly manage it well. They don't make luxury the goal, they make freedom and responsibility the goal. This kind of modeling creates financial role models children can trust and emulate, and it sets the tone for a legacy of quiet, thoughtful wealth building. The long-term impact. When parents instill financial responsibility in their children, the ripple effect is enormous. It means children are less likely to move back in or depend on parents in adulthood. They're more likely to build wealth of their own. They develop stronger work ethics, better decision-making, and long-term planning skills. They become stewards of the family's values, not just recipients of its money. This is how wealth becomes generational, not through handouts, but through habits. In summary, raising financially responsible children is one of the highest forms of wealth protection. Millionaires next door don't spoil their kids, they equip them. They teach them to work, to plan, to respect money, and to value independence. If you want your wealth to last, don't just build a portfolio. Build a legacy of financial wisdom, starting at home. Habit 6. Choose the right occupation and partner wisely. Wealth isn't only built by what you earn or save, it's also influenced by who you are and who you surround yourself with. In The Millionaire Next Door, Thomas Stanley and William Danko revealed a striking insight. Many millionaires didn't necessarily have high-status jobs, but they chose careers that allowed them to accumulate wealth, and they often partnered with people who shared their financial values. Let's break this down. Your occupation. It's not about prestige. When you think millionaire, you might think of surgeons, investment bankers, or high-powered lawyers. But Stanley and Danko found something surprising. A large percentage of actual millionaires had unglamorous jobs. Think small business owners, self-employed service providers, engineers, or accountants. What they had in common wasn't prestige, it was profitability and control. These careers often provided steady, above-average income, low overhead or flexible expenses, autonomy over how time and resources were spent. More importantly, these individuals used their earnings wisely. They kept expenses low, invested the difference, and stayed focused on long-term goals. They didn't need a flashy title to justify spending money or to prove anything to anyone. Millionaires Next Door understand it's not what you do that matters, it's how you manage what you earn, and whether your profession enables consistency, control, and growth. Self-employment versus high salaries. Self-employed individuals were disproportionately represented among millionaire households. Why? Because business ownership, done right, offers greater income potential, control over tax strategy and expenses, the opportunity to build a sellable asset. Even modest businesses like plumbing companies, cleaning services, or dental practices often lead to seven-figure net worths when managed conservatively. Compare this to high-salary employees living in expensive cities. Despite big incomes, many struggle to accumulate wealth because they face high taxes, inflated lifestyles, and job dependency. The takeaway: the right occupation gives you a vehicle. It doesn't need to be glamorous, it needs to support your values and your financial strategy. Marry smart. Shared values multiply wealth. Another critical insight from the research: the person you marry can make or break your wealth journey. Most millionaires were in long-term relationships with partners who shared their values around money, frugality, and future planning. Wealth building takes time, patience, and consistent decisions. If one partner is focused on financial independence while the other chases instant gratification, progress stalls or reverses. Millionaire couples often create and review financial plans together. Agree on spending and saving priorities. Avoid consumer debt. Celebrate milestones like debt payoff and investment gains, not luxury purchases. They're not just romantic partners, they're financial teammates. Stanley and Danko emphasized that many millionaires said marrying the right partner was the most important decision they ever made, not only emotionally, but financially. Avoiding financial sabotage. Choosing the wrong partner, personally or professionally, can sabotage years of financial effort. This might include a spouse who constantly overspends or hides debt, a business partner with no financial discipline, friends or peers who pressure you into high consumption habits. Millionaires Next Door protect their financial ecosystems. They limit exposure to people or environments that threaten their progress. It's not about being antisocial, it's about being intentional. Wealth is hard to build. Surrounding yourself with aligned, growth-oriented people makes it significantly easier. You don't need to change jobs, but you might need to change focus. If you're not in the wealth-building profession, that doesn't mean you can't become wealthy, but it may mean you increase your financial education, you start a side business, or invest actively. You live well below your means and supercharge savings. Wealth isn't exclusive, it's strategic. If your career doesn't offer huge income upside, double down on budgeting, investing, and minimizing liabilities. You don't need to be a business owner to become a millionaire. But the mindset of ownership of your time, your decisions, your goals is key. In summary, wealthy people don't just earn more or spend less. They build their lives around their values, choosing professions that support long-term stability and partnerships that multiply, not drain, their financial progress. They work with intention. They love with intention. And they protect their financial foundation by surrounding themselves with people who share their vision. Because in the end, your income matters. But your choices and your team matter even more. Conclusion: quiet wealth, loud freedom. The millionaire next door doesn't crave applause. They don't broadcast their success, chase clout, or measure life in likes. Their success is quiet, intentional, and deeply rooted in values that most people overlook. They don't look rich, but they are. They built their wealth on 6 timeless habits: living below their means, prioritizing independence over status, budgeting and planning with precision, making smart investments, raising financially responsible children, and choosing stable partnerships and careers. None of these habits require genius, luck, or a high-paying job. They require clarity, consistency, and the willingness to live differently from the crowd. The path of the quietly rich isn't fast, but it's real. It's not about hype, hustle culture, or risky bets. It's about building a life of freedom, freedom from stress, from debt, from dependence, and from the need to impress. In a world obsessed with outward success, the millionaire next door reminds us that true wealth happens behind the scenes. It's lived in peace of mind, in options, in time freedom. It's the ability to walk away, to say no, and to live life on your terms. So if you're ready to stop chasing someone else's definition of success and start building your own, the blueprint is already here. Live simply, spend wisely, invest consistently, and let your wealth speak for itself. Because the goal isn't to look rich, it's to be free.